looking at it, how can we deal with that emotion in view of being constantly reminded and told time and time again of the events that cause that emotion?
Well, I think one thing I think we need to say here is that every person on the planet experiences some degree of fear at certain times in certain situations. So the emotion of fear, the feeling of fear is normal, it is healthy. As a matter of fact, there's evidence that supports the notion that people oftentimes become very violent when they somehow get shut off from their capacity to experience fear. Because the fear alerts you to danger. And so when we lose our sense of danger, you see, we're much more likely to be overly aggressive. For example, say if two persons get into an argument and the argument begins to escalate. Well, generally when that happens, or as that is happening, each person will feel some degree of fear inside. And the fear is the alerting signal to say, hold off now, calm down, this situation is getting out of hand. So if the person doesn't get that signal, doesn't get that warning, you see, it's very difficult for them to read the dangerousness of the situation.
And so fear can be good as well as bad. Is that what we're saying?
Very definitely, very definitely. Now, I think some fear essentially is healthy and it's good, it's necessary, it's adaptive. The problem is where there's a persistence of excessive fear or a persistence of extreme fear. That's when fear becomes a problem.
Well, could we say that what has happened since September the 11th is leading toward excessive fear? Well, let's look at it from that perspective. If you
yes, I would say the events of September 11th has intensified fear to the point that fear in many people throughout our nation today has become excessive. In addition to that, I think it has also intensified fear in some people to the point that now their fear is extreme. But I think it's important that these people were prone to respond in this way prior to September 11th. Example, if prior to September 11th I was a person of faith, I had faith in God and I was going to church and I was trying to live a life pleasing to God, then the events of September 11th would not escalate my fear to the point of extreme or even excessive, okay? On the other hand, if prior to September 11th I was self-centered or pleasure-centered or taking advantage of other people in whatever way, then the trauma of those events on September 11th most likely will intensify my fear to the point of excessive fear or to the point of extreme fear.
You know, Dr. Poe, when you talk about self-centered persons, let's talk about that. I mean, explain to us what you mean when you talk about self-centered, a person, an individual who's self-centered, etc. What is what's a typical self-centered individual like, so that persons who are watching can say to themselves whether or not they believe that they are self-centered, or they might think that you're talking about using some psychological term that does not apply to them. Talk about it from that perspective.
Right. Self-centered basically means I'm motivated by my desire for pleasure, my desire for comfort, my desire for, oftentimes, for affluent financial holdings. It means that my primary concern is myself. My primary concern is adding to me. And in contrast to being God-centered, or if I'm Muslim, Allah-centered, or if I'm Hindu, Krishna-centered, all right? So there's the polarity there. When I'm self-centered, I'm also pleasure-centered. When I am self-centered, I'm also worldly centered. Okay? When I'm self-centered, I'm also materialistic. When I'm self-centered, I have myself in the center of my concern, as opposed to having God in the center of my concern.
Very good. And of course, Dr. Poe, let us take this first commercial break and we'll come back and we'll continue that conversation following this short commercial break.